Hello, everybody. This is Lynn Leatherwood. I'm the president of Story Circle Network, and I am very happy to, my dog and I are very happy to have you here today for what does it mean to be a feminist writer in 2022. This is a very, very pertinent issue for all of us, and we are delighted to have Corie Adjmi with us and Veena Rao, who are going to address these issues for us today. Corie is the author of a short story collection, Life and Other Shortcomings. I like that title, Corie. That made me smile when I read it, which won an International Book Award, an IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award, an American Fiction Award. Congratulations, wow. Her essays and short stories have appeared in dozens of journals and magazines, including, there's a very long list, HuffPost, North American Review, Indiana Review, Medium, Motherwell. She's been featured in Travel and Leisure, New York Magazine, the Hollywood Times, Parade, and BuzzFeed. We probably need to have you back to help us figure out how to get published more, because you clearly know how to do that well. And her forthcoming book is a novel entitled The Marriage Box. It's due out in August 2022. And that sounds interesting as well. So and I'm sure there's the whole feminist writer angle is probably prevalent in that book as well. When she's not writing, Corie does volunteer work. She cooks, draws, bikes, and hikes. She and her husband have 5 children, and a number of grandchildren, with more on the way. She lives and works in New York City. And then Veena, just one second, I'm going to yell at my dogs. Frankie, no. Okay, there we go. Veena Rao is from Atlanta, and Veena is an award-winning journalist and author. Purple Lotus, her recently released debut novel, is a 2021 American Fiction Award winner, a 2021 Georgia Author of the Year finalist, and an award-winning finalist in the multicultural and women's fiction categories of the 2021 International Book Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I bought your book. I loved your book. She is the founder, publisher, and editor-in-chief of NRI Pulse, an Atlanta-based news publication. And she's been recognized by the Limca Book of Records, which is the Indian version of the Guinness Book of World Records, as the first Indian woman to edit and publish newspaper outside of India. Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. When she's not writing or meeting press deadlines, you'll find her meditating or photographing the flora and fauna on her wooded walk route. I love that. That was very lyrical, nicely written. And you'll be able to see both Veena and Corie's websites that they will be listed here as well. So welcome, Veena and Corie. We're all ears here. So happy you've come to join us here at Story Circle Network. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Len. Thank you. And thank you, Story Circle Network, for this opportunity. Very excited to be here. And thank you all for joining us this evening. So what does it mean to be a feminist writer in 2022? For the next 50 minutes, my amazing author friend Corie and I will discuss the unique paths we chose for our characters to challenge the status quo. We'll also be sharing our thoughts and some tips on writing feminist fiction. The discussion will also include a fun interactive session on the craft of writing a novel. We'd love for all participants to get involved in the session and make it as interactive as possible. So please do post your comments and questions in the chat window. We'll be taking questions from participants later in the session. Next slide, please. Thank you, Liz. So, feminist fiction is now a genre in itself. right? Corie's book, Life and Other Shortcomings, and my novel, Purple Lotus, were both part of Parade magazine's list of essential books to get you thinking and talking about feminism, alongside books by Michelle Obama and Glennon Doyle, Roxane Gay, Melinda Gates, Chimamanda Adichie, and many other prominent authors. And what's interesting is that the article pulls together feminist writing from the 60s and 70s, as well as contemporary writing, and some indie writers like Corie and me. So it's a wonderful list. Check it out if you can. It's on Parade magazine. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite Corie Adjmi to get the discussion started. Take it away, Corie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here tonight, and welcome to everyone who's joining us. I've really found that talking about writing with fellow writers and with readers has become one of my favorite things to do. So can we see the next slide, please? So I wanted to share this list of books with you because these books are really special to me. I discovered writing kind of late in life. I was in my 30s. And I didn't grow up wanting to be a writer. I was a teacher, but after writing my graduate school thesis on storytelling, I became hooked, realizing that stories not only entertained, but they changed people. They inspired, they made people feel deeply and cultivated empathy. Stories are powerful teachers. And there are so many good writing resources in the world, but for one reason or another, these were magical for me. And when I was first starting out, and I wanted to share them. Maybe you've read them, but even if you have, I think they're great for inspiration. And it's just a little reminder to go back and maybe take a peek at them again. Next slide, please. So what is feminist fiction? Feminist fiction deals with the lives of women, female experiences, and their viewpoints. Feminist fiction illuminates a particular aspect of the female condition. Maybe that includes voice and how women are sometimes, at least historically, expected to keep quiet. Feminist fiction might portray how women have been underrepresented in the culture, or it might include some explorations around female sexuality and reproduction. The writing might show an aspect of economics, like how the salaries of men and women are still not equal. And just saying that sentence makes me want to get writing. So feminist fiction may also make a political statement in regards to female inequality, female oppression, and or patriarchy. Feminist fiction may inspire change. I want to say, and this feels really important, that I did not set out to write feminist fiction. I was just writing from my heart. I was telling personal stories, experiences from my memories, and I used my imagination to create something new. I like to think of writing as a collage. It's a process, and using a collage of words and ideas is how I build a character and how I decide what characters will do, at least initially. And one of the writing exercises we're going to do later on tonight uses this approach, so we can talk more about that later. I'm going to read to you a few pages of a short story titled Dinner Conversation. It's the first story in my collection, Life and Other Shortcomings. And while I read, please listen for aspects of the story that you think makes this feminist fiction. Dinner conversation. We sit three couples, as we always do, boy, girl, with no married couples next to each other. When we were first married, I didn't like this. Now I don't care. It is 1998, and this New York City restaurant just recently opened. It's a happening kind of place, populated by the cool and the young, part bar, part restaurant, part lounge. Red walls make you feel both sexy and regal. Music beats in the background. It's the kind that seeps into your skin and pulses under your bones. We sit at a large round table, and a waitress, her hair tied back in a ponytail, approaches us. She isn't wearing any makeup, and she exudes a wholesome sexuality that, I have to admit, is alluring. She hands each of us a menu, and lights a candle in the center of the table. She moves like an exotic bird, graceful and deliberate. I have just laid eyes on this woman, and already I'm threatened by her natural beauty and her presence. She stands beside me, both feet grounded. I play a game. I spot a person, and based on how they look, what they wear, and how they stand, I draw up a whole life for them, if they're married or not, where they live, what their apartment or house might look like, and what they do for a living. I decide that she's an aspiring actress living in an apartment in the village, venturing toward her dream. Marissa, a Monica Lewinsky lookalike, sits to the right of my husband, Dylan. They went to high school together, and when she married Eric, Dylan marched in their wedding. When Dylan and I started dating, he wanted me to get to know them. He didn't care what his mother thought about me. He wanted Marissa to like me, and she did. Dana, who is tall and blonde, sits to Dylan's left. She just got back from a spa in California, and she's lost weight. She looks too skinny to me. The bones in her wrists protrude like large marbles. But who am I to judge? Dylan says you can never be too skinny. It's like being too rich. I watch my husband as he entertains. I pay special attention as he leans in to say something to Dana. She throws her head back and laughs. Dana and I have been friends with Peter and Dana for close to 15 years. We met them at a parenting class we took before the birth of our first child. Dylan was complaining about having to be there on a Monday night during football season, and Peter overheard him. They took off early and went to a bar across the street to watch the end of the game. We've all been friends ever since. We know this is unusual. About 10 years ago, 5 years into the friendship, 5 years worth of dinners and vacations and cocktail parties, we named ourselves. We are the Sixers. When the waitress returns, she places a basket of bread on our table. Marissa, who is facing the wall, turns her body dramatically, her long black hair swinging over her shoulder. It isn't often that Marissa doesn't sit facing out, able to see the crowd, and she wants everyone at our table to notice her strain. "What can I get you?" the waitress asks. I know what Dylan is thinking. He gets that look on his face, the one I recognize all too well, the one he at one time reserved for me. His eyes glimmer like two perfect diamonds. "What's your name?" he asks the waitress. "Judy," she says, smiling, her teeth lined up like a row of miniature marshmallows. "Hi, Judy," Dylan flirts. "Nice to meet you. We'll have 2 bottles of Pellegrino for the table, and I'll have a Glenrothe neat." Judy takes our drink order, and Dylan looks at me. "You're gonna eat that?" I slip the breadstick out of my mouth and scan the table to see who has heard this. I've gained weight, and it bothers Dylan that his wife is getting fat. I'm not sure how I feel about it. At first it was a surprise, but now I kind of like the extra weight. It makes me feel stronger, more grounded. But Dylan has no patience for fat. Fat, in his view, is a complete betrayal of a body, and it represents a person without discipline or self-respect. Pregnancy is no exception, and while I felt full and complete, voluptuous, and even beautiful as I carried my 3 children to term, I knew that Dylan couldn't look at me. After I gave birth to David, our first, just a week after his birth, Dylan replaced the whole milk with skim, and every product in our cabinet said fat-free. I suppose he wanted back the wife he'd married, but I could no longer play that part. So in just those few pages, I touch on some cultural expectations around female beauty, weight, physical appearance in general, and that breadstick scene. I actually witnessed that scene many years ago, and it was way before we had words, labels like fat shaming and boundary crossing and bullying. Even though maybe that was familiar to other people, those words at the time were not so familiar to me. And Dylan flirting under his wife's nose is an example of patriarchy, and Callie being undervalued while the waitress is being objectified. And Callie feeling like she needed to play a part when she was dating Dylan, that she couldn't be herself. So I'd like you to think about those concepts and how they were dramatized in fiction. And I'm going to wrap up this portion of the workshop with a quote from Margaret Atwood, which is, A word after a word after a word is power. And that rings really true for me. The act of writing is powerful. As women, we are taking up space, claiming territory, maybe even greenlighting our own work in a field where we have been underrepresented. When we write, we protect and amplify our voices, opinions, and our stories. And so writing, simply writing, in my view, is an act of feminism. Veena.
Thank you, Corie. You know, the dinner conversations is one of my favorite stories from your book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, moving on to my book, you know, people often ask me what motivated me to write a book about a woman who comes across as weak and vulnerable, and she's fearful. She feels like she has very little control of her life. How is that feminist fiction? And my answer is, your characters need not all be feminists. Sometimes it's important to show readers in a very intimate, visceral way what's missing in your female character's life. Or it might be important to show the price the woman has to pay for following her heart. Purple Lotus is the story of Tara, an Indian woman who immigrates to the American South. And she's trapped in a loveless, abusive marriage. But she's also from a patriarchal family that wants her to make peace with her circumstances and not challenge the status quo. The story follows Tara as she gradually builds the courage to break free, to gently rebuild her life, and she learns to honor her own worth. The book is woven around the themes of abuse and confronting the patriarchy and fighting for your right to self-determination, which are very hardcore feminist themes. Reading about abuse isn't pleasant, but it's very necessary for the story, for Tara's story, and I think readers understand that. Sometimes I believe it might be necessary to make the reader uncomfortable in order to get your point across. If your writing inspires readers to think about situations that they've never thought of before, or think of themes or issues that they've never thought of before, I think your job as a writer is done. Like my protagonist, I come from a patriarchal family, and I have seen from up close what patriarchy can do, not only to interpersonal relationships, but also just the way you view yourself. So it was very important for me to write Tara's story. It was very important for me to write about a woman who feels, who has low self-esteem, who feels like she has very little control over her life. And I also wanted to explore what abuse could do to a woman who already has all these issues, who already has deep-rooted abandonment fears. How would she find the courage to break free? And how would she find the courage to rebuild her life? So I think Tara's story humanizes the immigrant experience. I believe domestic abuse happens everywhere. It has happened through time. It transcends race, culture, and time. But there are some patriarchal issues, or there are some immigrant issues that make it harder for some women to change their lives, change their circumstances. In patriarchal cultures, such as the one I come from, if the burden is always on the woman to try harder. And if she does find the courage to leave, she is branded with labels, a divorcee or single woman or separated woman. You know, these are labels, and the woman is socially isolated. Or, she has to live with labels. An immigrant woman victim might also be financially and legally dependent on her abuser. She does not want her abuser to be deported, because that would end it for all of them, for her and for her children as well. Or she might be financially dependent on the abuser. So I believe my book takes a universal theme and attempts to tell it from the unique perspective of an immigrant woman from India. Feminist writing goes hand in hand with the women's empowerment movement. And I have explored several female relationships in Purple Lotus, but of course, not all of them are empowering. Tara's relationship with her mother, for instance, is a very important part of the book. The mother, who is mostly just a voice at the other end of the phone, is the voice of patriarchy, and she perpetuates outdated belief systems because that has been the setup she has lived in all her life. And she also imposes her idea of happiness on her daughter. And her idea of happiness is, a suburban home, a husband, children, and an American citizenship, because that's the ticket to the American dream. And she foists her ideas on her daughter. And when Tara learns to stand up for herself and she ultimately walks out on her abusive husband, the mother is devastated. She's worried about her family's social standing, but she's also worried about her daughter becoming the subject of gossip and for blackening her family name. The other important relationship in Purple Lotus is the one is between Tara and the sisterhood she finds in Atlanta. From strangers pitching in with everything from legal advice to shelter, it is this sisterhood that carries her through the darkest phases of her life. I also wanted to add here that I've had the same experience. I've lived here for 20 years, a little over 20 years, and almost every woman I've met in the first few years in this country have empowered me in some way. And so it was very important for me to explore the sisterhood in my book. Of course, it's important to understand that a damsel in distress does not need a savior. She needs support. I came across this quote on a Medium article. It was a beautiful article. The change has to come from within your character. And that's something I've attempted to portray in Purple Lotus. When the book begins, we meet the protagonist who has a weak sense of self. But as the story progresses, we see her go from strength to strength. And even though her friends encourage her and they make her see a new, make her aware of new possibilities, ultimately the desire to change her life comes from within her. So Tara is her own savior. I have a quote here from Roxane Gay, which says, "Feminism cannot merely be about gender. It must also be about equality in the fields of race, ethnicity, ability, sexuality, spirituality, class, and the many other markers of who we are." And I think as writers, this gives us so much scope to explore different facets of feminism and also combine it with other causes that are close to our heart. Having said this, it's also important to remember that feminist ambition cannot override the narrative ambition. Your number one challenge as a writer is to tell a compelling story, a page turner. And a feminist novel is not only about who we are, it's about our stories. Tara is not only a woman, she is a woman with a backstory. She is a woman from a particular place. She's from a small coastal town in India. And when she looks back on her childhood, which is that portion of the book is set in the 70s, she becomes a female from a particular time and place. So I believe, feminism, writing is not only about women's lives. I mean, the writing is about women's lives and not just about them, and feminism isn't the only issue that the book talks about. It talks about a host of other issues. It talks about immigrant issues like isolation or loneliness or assimilation. It also talks about mental health issues like depression and anxiety. I have put together a few thoughts on my experience writing Purple Lotus. Next slide, please. Yeah, so what is feminist fiction, writing feminist fiction in 2022? In the age of hashtags, how is new feminist writing different from earlier feminist work? I think there can be a greater emphasis on the intersectionality of gender, race, religion, and class. If you're writing historical fiction, stay true to the status of women in the period you're writing about. But like Corie said, but the very act of centering a novel on a woman's story is feminist. And make your writing more inclusive. You could consider including marginalized groups in your narrative. And how do you do that? Read about other cultures, reach out to people from other cultures, it could also be an exploration of what it means to be a woman today, what it means to be a career woman or a mother, a daughter, wife, girlfriend today. And it's also important to be cognizant of the fact that what is true for you may not necessarily be true for other groups across the world. I came across this book called Against White Feminism, written by a Pakistani journalist called Rafia Zakaria, which says that upper middle class white women have been heralded as experts on feminism, but their ideology may not resonate with other groups across the world, other women across the world. So these are my few thoughts on writing feminist fiction. I'd love for you to add your points to the list. Maybe we can do that. We can discuss it later in the session. I think I've used up my 10 minutes, so I'll stop here. We'll have a 10-minute Q&A session now. Feel free to ask questions.
And when you ask questions, if you will just raise your hand, we'll be looking over, and then we can give you the right to talk. Okay, so just raise your hand. And thank you both. This is Len. I guess I'll come back. Let me bring myself back up here just a minute. That was really fascinating and wonderful. I loved hearing, Corie, your reading from your book, and all of your thoughts, Veena. I think it's really important that we show women in those settings being, it's really disrespected is kind of the word that comes to mind. And it is such a nuanced, difficult moment. There's in your piece, Corie, the woman is with her friends, and how does she handle that so that she's not feeling overwhelmed and embarrassed? And so I think I really appreciate in both cases that you're handling tough topics, and I also the whole idea that if we write about women, then we are already writing feminist fiction, which is pretty cool. I like that very much, and that is our act of our own personal act of feminism. So now we have, is this Sean? I think it is Sean. In my historical fiction manuscript, my main character reflects upon, upon how she has been treated, but the circumstances of the time often run over her desires and plans for success. Sean, can I let you talk so you can expound on that just a little? I'm going to allow you to talk. There you go. Can you unmute?
Oh, there we go.
There
okay. Okay. Yeah, so this is very intriguing to me because I'm writing about an actual woman from the 1800s, and she comes back from the grave to tell her story, and she's realizing that she's really been a victim of the times. She lost her business because of the overturn of the governments. She goes against her family's wishes and joins in the revolution and enters the battle at the Alamo. So I'm very much intrigued by your statement about, because I don't know if this fits in the category of being somewhat feminist, but basically she wants to get her story out there. And it's the reason why I wanted to get her book out there, or her story, because I feel like she's been overlooked. And she's quite an amazing woman, really. When I did my research, I just hadn't thought really, I mean, going back to the 1800s, would we say she was a feminist in her own right?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question, please?
I'm just wondering, when we go back and tell the stories of women from long ago, so this
Right.
doesn't fit into the
Yeah.
category of the modern feminist,
Right.
but we can share feminist qualities.
Yes, I think just the very act of centering a story around a woman is feminist, because historically women's stories have not been told. But I think it's also important to stay true to the story you're writing about. If you're writing about a woman from the 1800s, it's important to show readers what life was like for women back then.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm
Dawn,
really enjoying
it sounds like your character also was breaking the rules that were set at the time that she was supposed to be following. She was following her heart, doing what she wanted to do. And I think that makes her brave, courageous, and probably a feminist.
Yes, okay, thank you. I never thought of it like that before. And so I'm really enjoying hearing everything you have to say.
Thank you.
And Cindy had a good question. And then Lynn, I'm going to let you talk right after that. Cindy said, please define what intersectionality means to you. It seems like an important concept. Maybe you guys could address that right now.
Yes, to me, intersectionality means combining two or more issues. For instance, my book talks about feminist issues, but it also talks about immigration issues. What is it like for a woman who moves from India to the American South? What is it like to assimilate into a new culture? What are the challenges she faces? So I think it's important for us modern feminist writers to write about feminism, but also write about other issues that women face. And that, I think, will be the trend in the fourth wave of feminism or feminist writing that we talk about. Corie, would you like to say something?
Just that I agree with you that we need to expand our stories. I mean, my book is a collection of stories. So there are 12 different stories with 12 different protagonists, and the stories range from talking about family and relationships and marriage to illness and equality. And yeah, I think the more nuance and the more diversity we can bring to the picture, the more full the genre will feel.
Okay. I'm going to let Lynn Goodwin talk now. Lynn, there you are. Unmute, please, Lynn. There you go.
I am unmuted. I don't think I raised my hand, but, but as long as you called on me, I do have a question, comment, concern. I am writing a YA in which a 16-year-old protagonist does not fulfill the traditional role of cute girls on campus. Her goal was to be a stage manager for the play. She likes control, she likes authority, and an earthquake kind of wipes a lot of things out. I have been told she does not seem to be 16. And I think it's because she is focused more on the show than a boyfriend.
Hmm.
Can you suggest a way to fix this?
I think this is something we can talk about offline. Maybe you can send us an email. We can,
Sure.
this will require some back and forth, I think,
And some thinking. I need.
and some thinking. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would be happy to do that. And Len, you can supply me with their emails, right?
Sure.
Corie, I think I have yours.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always love to hear from you, Len.
Yeah.
I'm just in, and I know you know a little bit of the story, Corie, and I am just interested in some input from writers I respect and trust.
Mhm.
And you can take that however you want, but it's a compliment to the two of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, I'm gonna go now to Tina, who says, I have a 19-year-old daughter. I'd be curious to get your thoughts about YA novels and how they've changed over the years. There are certain expectations that this generation of young women have that many of us only dreamed about growing up. Do you guys want to address that?
I'm sorry, I'm not much into YA novels. Corie?
The last one I read was The Hate You Give, I think. So the question is not necessarily about, can you repeat the question?
I will. It says, I'd be curious to get your thoughts about YA novels and how they've changed over the years. There are certain expectations that this generation of women have that many of us have only dreamed about growing up.
Yes, I mean, I definitely think things are changing, and I think in YA, I love YA actually. I haven't had a chance to read it in the last couple of years, but I do think that things are changing, and the contemporary fiction must be an image and a viewpoint of what's happening in the society at the time. And so as the world changes, the fiction's going to change. And I don't know if the question is about, I don't know exactly like what I can say more than that. Yes, I think it has changed. If there's a further question or if I'm not answering it properly, I'd be happy to try again.
Tina also writes, my daughter is now reading adult novels, but she was reading YA at a much earlier age than I was. It took me a while as her mother to adjust into books on sexuality at the age of 13. And I do think, just on my own thoughts on it, that it's pretty amazing how far women have come as reflected in YA novels. That you can see that, as Tina's saying, that the expectations girls have now are very different than, say, when I was growing up, of what of how we expected boys to behave, even simply as that. I mean, just something as basic as that. And so that's, I think that goes to 2 points you're making. One is that you have to stay abreast of the current times. At the same time, if you're writing about the past, you have to make it relevant to that time and make sure that it's right.
Absolutely. Even in the piece that I just read, Dinner Conversation, it's set in 1998. I don't think it would read the same way in a restaurant today,
Right.
with 35-year-old couples today. It would be different.
I think it would.
Yeah.
It's just even in that amount of time. And then Beth wrote, would intersectionality of today be the multifaceted characters of the past? Do you think that is the same thing, or do you think it's different?
I'm sorry, Len, your voice broke a little.
Okay, let me
read.
read.
To look at the question.
Would intersectionality of today be the multifaceted characters of the past? Do you think that's the same thing, or are you talking about something else?
Well, it could be the same thing, but by intersectionality, I would think it means different issues that you're talking about. Multifaceted characters. I think, I'm not sure. I think Tina might want to expand on the question.
Well, I think that's Beth, actually,
Beth,
who
I'm
asked that
sorry.
question. But from what I understood, you were talking about with intersectionality was bringing in all the different aspects of someone's life.
Yes.
Exactly.
That
Yes.
it's to be very careful to do that and to remember when that it's not just about, say you're writing a feminist novel, you don't want it all to be heavily, I mean, that's your only thing. That people are dealing with many issues.
Many issues like an intersectionality of gender, race, religion, class. These are just examples. They're just different issues that we talk about.
Which maybe is different than the multifaceted, because that means, and I think that's the difference in 1998, even in 2022. You know, I mean, we have to be thinking of all of these different aspects at this point. It's not that they weren't there before, but now the reader expects that. They want a more nuanced rendition of what life looks like.
Yes, and the publishing industry is changing, I think. It's more open to different, you know, it's more inclusive. Let's just say it's more inclusive. So this is a great time to talk about different issues.
Yeah, exactly. Cynthia asked, do either of you have male characters who are feminist and allies?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. One of the characters in my book, Cyrus, his name is Cyrus. He's a feminist. He's a feminist because he treats his wife as an equal, or, you know, he is, you know, there's several scenes in the book where I'm losing my train of thoughts. I'm sorry. You know, he, for example, he wakes up in the morning, he enjoys cooking breakfast, and he enjoys doing things with his wife. So, you know, yeah, male characters can be feminists, definitely.
I have one who's a nice guy in my book, but I tend to write not such nice men. So there's one man in my book who could be considered a feminist. 4 of the stories are told from the male perspective, but they still inform a female condition. They still inform the female story.
Interesting. Yeah. Sean wrote, feminism cannot merely be about gender. And that's a quote. I think this speaks to the need to incorporate more aspects of the human condition to make a strong story, which is where that intersectionality comes in, I think is what.
Absolutely.
I think that's
a great point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, mine was never intended to be feminist fiction. It was just the writing. It was just the thoughts and feelings of the world around me, what I was seeing with my friends, what I was reading in the newspaper, what I was seeing on television. And it just was what organically came out. And it turned out it had a point of view, and it turned out that it could be considered feminist fiction, but that was not the original goal at all.
Well, and to the point that you guys made earlier, I think if you go, oh, this book has to be feminist fiction, you have to be careful that you're not hitting the nail with a sledgehammer, that you have to be, you know, that you have to incorporate all these other things, because otherwise it's a message book. And that's not really, it's not, it gets in the way of, I mean, it can have all of the feminist issues with and address them without it being, you know.
Yes, your number one, I believe your number one goal as a writer is to write a compelling page turner. That's your number one goal.
Right, right.
Yes.
Okay, and then Tina said one more thing, and then we'll move. I'm always thinking about books that have liberated me in some way, like Eat, Pray, Love. which was a memoir. And yeah, exactly. That a lot of times it's someone's memoir that by a woman that liberates other women, you know. And then one other question, and please address the issues of trans women and queer identity too, as they are on the feminist spectrum.
That's a great point. It's a great point. My book does not talk about trans women, but my next book does talk about queer identity. So yes, they're on this feminist spectrum for sure.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to invite you to participate in a writing exercise. We're going to take about 12 minutes to do some free writing. We're giving you 3 choices here to pick from. So I'll read the 3 exercises, and then you can pick one that appeals to you, or if you have time, 2 of them. And after, we'll share what we've worked on. So the first exercise is to make a list of 5 characters, make a list of 5 wants, and a list of 5 obstacles, and then pick one from each column and create a story around one of those characters with a certain want and an obstacle that's in that character's way. The second exercise is think of a news article or a real life story that illuminates some aspect of the female experience or points to female inequality. Think like a fiction writer and turn this drama into fiction by using your imagination and changing the details. Just for example, I created a character from a New York Times article. The real life villain was overweight and addicted to coffee. I made my character super thin and addicted to nose spray. And exercise 3 is pick a quote or quotes and use it as inspiration to write a paragraph of a feminist story. I am a woman, phenomenally phenomenal woman, that's me, Maya Angelou. Freeing yourself was one thing. Claiming ownership of that freed self was another, Toni Morrison. I hate to hear you talking so like a fine gentleman and as if women were all fine ladies instead of rational creatures. We none of us expect to be in smooth water all our days, Jane Austen. There is no gate, no lock, no bolt that you can set upon the freedom of my heart, Virginia Woolf. So I'm going to set my watch on my phone for 12 minutes. And enjoy yourselves. Maybe like 15 more seconds. Okay. Veena?
Yeah, would you like to raise your hand if you'd like to read out your exercise?
Let's see. Cynthia. Cynthia, I'm going to allow you to talk, okay? You have to unmute, Cynthia.
Okay, is it unmuted?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. On the morning of the 5th day of her fast, she laid on the bed in the hotel room she had not left in those 4 previous days. Unexpectedly, she felt her spirit loosen from her body. Her conscious self now observed her body, eyes closed, prone upon the bed, hands clasped across her midriff. The exhilaration of this freedom from her form was intense. Having no words for this, no concept or precedent, was disorienting, but curiosity overtook her. She tested her unusual state, finding she was able to pass through the wall. Suddenly aware of how total her freedom was, she looked back down from the upper left-hand corner of the ceiling, realizing her body could die, yet how to return to it. Instantly, she was reunited within her flesh, the overcoat that it actually was, and would never fear death again. But neither would she play with this ability. A good teacher would be necessary. And now, at age 21, was not the time to delve any further into the metaphysical. That came from the Virginia Woolf quote.
So which exercise was it? Was it the first one or the second?
The last one, the number 3.
Oh, it came from her quote. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
Well, this actually did happen to me. So I guess you could say I'm cheating a little bit because I took an experience and I am a memoirist, but I haven't published anything about it.
You had a near-death experience?
Yes, but it was not from an accident or anything. It was from fasting. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, and this actually happened to me in Beirut in Lebanon. But so a lot of my stories are the intersectionality of being an expatriate and the class systems in the various countries where I've lived and things. But this idea of the universal, what's universal in the mystic level is also very interesting to me, and feminine mysticism too. Very interested with the female aspects of God or goddess or what have you, but also sort of beyond the gendered aspect. But yeah, I'm really enjoying tonight, by the way. Thank you both. Thank everybody.
That was
I'd like to hear the next person.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Let's see, is anybody else? Juliana, I'm going to allow you to speak now, just as soon as I can, for some reason. Oh, there it goes. Okay, Juliana, you have to unmute. And you should be able to speak now, Juliana.
Okay. I'm afraid. I'm hungry. I'm cold. I have no money. No matter what makeup I've used, they know I'm indigenous, a dirty Indian, good for just one thing. Gina disappeared last year. Everyone knows what happened. They don't even bother to look for missing First Nations women. Women like me, worthless, don't matter. Daily we disappear, used, beaten. I don't want to be one of those disappeared women. The shelter is not safe. It looks lovely, but they just traffic you to the miners and the oil field workers. You go missing and no one cares. You're lucky to even make it in the local newspapers. There's no real work for women like me. I'm afraid, I'm hungry, I'm cold. I do not want to die.
Oh my, that was beautiful. Was it the first exercise?
No, the second.
The second one.
There was very strong voice in that piece.
There are a lot of Indigenous women in Canada and Navajo Nation and various places that disappear and nobody bothers to find out what happened to them.
Yes. Do you work with Indigenous women, Juliana?
No, but my grandson is part Navajo.
Okay.
And I'm really interested and spend a lot of time with people from other cultures, from different places, from all over the world.
That's wonderful.
It was really powerful, Juliana. Very strong.
Yes.
Well, it fits with all the other stuff you hear me doing, huh, Lynn?
It does. I'm not surprised. I thought it was very good, my dear. As usual, you're a voice for women. Good job. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you now, Juliana, and Rebecca has her hand up. So Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and let you speak. Let me hold on, Rebecca, allow to speak. There you go. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Okay, I used the last exercise and the quote from Virginia Woolf. She grasped the steel bars with both hands. Fury filled her body. Her pale knuckles reflected her frustration. 10 smooth manicured nails faced her. She thought she heard them say, "No more mani-pedis for you." Her gaze held the shimmer of the red nails against the cool metal. She made a mental list of all this mistake would take away. She stopped mid-thought. There's one thing that can't be taken, ever. Breathing deeply, she stood taller and stronger as she let this sink in. I hold the power of my thoughts. I will free my mind. It's the only way to survive. No one, no thing can take this power. It's mine to control.
Wow. That was also amazing. So much amazing writing tonight. That was wonderful, Rebecca.
Thank you.
I love hearing where the writing comes from, which exercise it was and what inspired the piece.
My husband worked in a prison for a long time, so I have heard many, many stories, and he often talked about the inmates, the ones that were able to free their mind, what a difference it made. Yeah.
Very strong. Love the image of those red nails.
Yep.
That was really strong. Have we got anybody else? I'll read mine. Just one second. Okay. Justine looked at her husband with fire in her eyes. You do realize that you can't make me feel a certain way just by bullying me. Ted's face was stone. I can make you suffer, let's just say that. And where does that ultimately get you? Justine said, her voice steady. You acting the way a wife should act, getting silly notions out of your head, understanding that I'm the person that makes the decisions, not you. Justine sighed. Do you really think this is the way to keep me loving you, to force your power on me? Is that the kind of relationship you really want? I want a wife who respects me, who listens to what I have to say and does what I say. Enforcing me, is that your idea of how it should go? If that's what is required to bring you down a notch. Justine laughed. You can bring me down a notch however you like, verbally or physically. But the truth is, you can't control my mind. That's mine and mine alone. I'm sorry you don't know that. It tells me everything I need to know about you and the future of this relationship. It's very sad.
Wow, that was also powerful. Who is Justin? Do you just make up that name?
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Which exercise did you?
I did the Virginia Woolf too. There's no gate, no lock, no boat.
I think Virginia Woolf is very popular.
The freedom of my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
On my mind.
Let me see if any, Susan. Susan, I'm going to allow you to talk now. Unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
So I use the freeing yourself, the Toni Morrison quote. And this is where I got to. Having found a liberation from relationships with men, she set out feeling lighter, unburdened, and without concern for finding the man who might be the one. She drove 1,000 miles following her friend's directions to a small cabin in the snowy mountains where they would all visit her friend's lifelong friend. When he opened the door, he grinned and opened his arms in greeting. The hug was warm, friendly. She enjoyed dinner full of conversation that seemed like-minded. They all danced to Rumors by Fleetwood Mac, raising dust from the rug until they were exhausted. There were no extra beds. He offered for her to sleep in his bed rather than on the floor. They both thought they were talking only about sleeping. It didn't turn out that way. Hours later, she was sick to her stomach and feeling her life had again been taken over by desire or romance. She knew she was going to get pregnant. That's all.
I love how it ends. It makes you want to know more about the story.
Oh, good.
Yes, that was really wonderful.
I wish that I could write dialogue like you, Len. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I almost want to laugh. Haven't we all been there?
Yes, I
How
think.
I felt with yours.
Recognize
Oh,
that.
no, why did I do that? Oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm gonna
Really.
get pregnant. Yeah, there's that moment.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I loved the line in yours, Susan, about dancing in the dust in the rug, dancing with the dust rises in the rug. I thought that was a really great
Oh, good.
visual.
So many beautiful writers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you're at Story Circle Network. It is really actually awe-inspiring to be with these women because that's just happens every time there's a group. You just almost, it's jaw-dropping how beautiful the writing is, really.
It is.
And then Cynthia wrote on yours, Susan. Well, Tina wrote exactly great ending, Susan, a cliffhanger. We want to hear more. And then Susan and Cynthia wrote pregnant, something no man ever gets. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the truth. And good job there. Anybody else? All right, I'm not seeing any other hands up. It says, oh, Tina asked Lynn, is this what you would call flash fiction, what we're doing tonight? Yes, it is flash fiction, or it could be. I mean, if it is flash fiction is anything that's 1,200 words or less. And so any of these, of course, by nature of the time frame is going to be flash. If it is a complete story all in itself, that makes it a complete flash. I mean, a lot of these might be jumping off points, like Susan's might actually be the beginning of a short story or a novel, you know, I mean, or Rebecca's, you know, I mean, there's a lot going on in those stories so it just depends on where you're taking it from here is the question. All right, ladies, are you, I'm going to turn it back over to you and I'll get.
Yes, so we have a couple of giveaways. The first one is from Corie. Corie is giving away copies of her character study guide. All you have to do is sign up for her newsletter by visiting her website at corieadjmi.com or follow her on Instagram at corieadjmi and email her at corie@corieadjmi.com, letting her know you did so. And I'm offering a 5-chapter critique for one lucky winner who will follow me on Instagram and Twitter. My Instagram handle is Veena Rao, and I'm on Twitter as Veena Rao NRI. And you can email me at veenarao68@gmail.com once you follow me. One lucky winner will be offered a first 5-chapter critique of your work in progress. And thank you all for joining us tonight. Unless you have more questions for us, I think we can wind up our session.
Okay. Any other questions? If you have any other questions, this would be the opportunity to raise your hand. I'm really thrilled with your giveaways. These are, you know, believe me, I'll be signing up. No, these are very generous and we really, really appreciate it. The character study guide would be great, just because I certainly know I could use that. So I'll be signing up for that one for sure. And then Veena, a 5-chapter review, our critique is an enormous gift. Thank you for that. So we'll all keep our fingers crossed for that one. And I have Sean has written, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity tonight. It's been so helpful and insightful to understand how you've approached the topic of feminism. And I agree. I think that this really helps us to really understand how all-encompassing feminism really is. It's not, you know, it's very easy sometimes, and I think some people misunderstand when they hear the word feminism, and they think, oh, these are those real strident women who are standing up, and they're not understanding that feminism is just equality for women. And however we're able to do that as writers and show the world as it is and the way it could be, that's our contribution in the feminist realm. And that's what I got from what you presented tonight, both of you, and really, really appreciate your time and expertise on this area. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
We're so very happy to have you. And thank you all, everybody who came. We're delighted that you joined us. And we will, this is recorded, and then we will send you a recording in the next couple of days. And then there will also be a recording on the members only part of Story Circle Network. For any of the recordings that you have, I'm going to put them on, I'm going to transfer them to YouTube so that they can be used other places. So anybody that that wants to share theirs on their social media, I think that would be okay. Is that true for our presenters? Because that gets your books out there. Is that all right?
Sure.
Yes, of course. That would be great.
And that's an opportunity for all of us to get the word out. So feel free to do it. And thank you again. And Susan wrote, wonderful experience. Thanks to Corie and Veena, and thanks for organizing, Lynn and Liz. And Liz, is back there in the taking care of all of the details in the back room in her little shadow spot there. And we appreciate everything that Liz does always, because she makes everything run very smoothly. So thanks, Liz. All right, you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And if you two wouldn't mind just staying just a minute after, then that way
Sure.
we can just talk a second. Anybody who wants to stay, you may stay. You're not asked to leave at this point. Some people say this is their favorite time because we actually talk about what happened, but you don't feel compelled to stay.
Did I admit, you might not have, I might have spaced for a second, but did you mention our next webinar?
No, I did not, but you could.
I don't have it in front of me, but we have a webinar coming up in March. I believe on the 23rd. It will be Barbara Probst, and she will be doing a talk on hybrid publishing. So keep an eye out for that.
Mm-hmm. And Barbara is quite a pro. And she's presented for us several times and is a great presenter. She also presented at our conference. And so, and be looking for all of our ads for that'll be coming out soon. And I think, Veena, you ended up presenting. Wasn't Barbara one of the people you presented with in the first?
No. I presented with Cindy Roscoe,
yes,
Judith Teitelman, and Anika Rana. We're all
That's
She
right.
Writes Press authors.
That's right. And Cindy was here. She did come to this one. So very good. And I would also really love it if you guys would consider thinking about teaching a class for us at some point.
Yes,
We would
of
love
course.
that. I coordinate the classes, and would love to have a conversation with either one of you or both of you about that, because we're always looking for, educated writers and experienced writers to teach, and that would be wonderful. Sounds like you have a lot of things you could offer.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
lovely. It'd be
Yes,
my pleasure.
Wonderful. Okay.
It
Well,
was
we
my pleasure as well.
Mom,
thank
can you please end the recording?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, hold on. Let's see.